Now for a movie rant break, One Up presents a movie rant break. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the movie rant break. Got a super ill episode today. As always, you know how we do it over here at the movie rant break. Today I got returning guest. Best neighbor on the fucking planet. You know what it is. Good friend of mine, Ricky Brown.
Right on. How you doing?
Right on. Remember inside joke, but you can check the episode. That shit's funny.
Yes.
Anyways, so today we are going to continue reviewing the Indiana Jones films. Today we're on number 3. We got Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Came out back in May 24th, 1989. It was rated PG-13. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. Screenplay by Jeffrey Boehm. Story by George Lucas and Menno Meyjes. Based on the characters by George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. Produced by Robert Watts. Film was starring Harrison Ford, Denholm Elliott, Allison Doody, John Rhys Davies, Julian Glover, and of course, Sean Connery, rest in peace. Cinematography by Douglas Slocum, edited by Michael Kahn, music by John Williams. John Williams is the GOAT. I don't know.
He is. Yeah, he definitely is.
He's done so much crazy music. Production company, Lucasfilms, distributed by Paramount Pictures, which means you can watch the Indiana Jones films on Paramount Plus. That's what I did. So if you didn't know, now you know. And had a runtime of 2 hours and 7 minutes. Budget $48 million with a box office of $474.2 million, which is a lot.
Yes.
I put that in perspective, right? Where a film, say a high budget, like I think Potter was like 200 million budget, right? But that's like doing like 2 billion, doing 10 times what the budget was. Like this did crazy numbers.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to point out the fact that the first Indiana Jones came out in 1981, the second one came out in 1984, and this one was 1989.
Yeah, there's quite a time span.
8 years.
Second and third.
Yeah.
You know, first to third, of course, even more so. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's like a big gap. It's an unconventional gap
Yeah.
between sequels, I would say.
I think so.
5 years?
Yeah. I think they try to keep them maybe a couple years apart, and that's it.
Generally, I think the average, if they're like in production back-to-back type shit, it's usually like, unless they're back-to-back hard body, they'll do it. It might come out the next year. Like I think the Avengers Infinity War came out, and then the following year Endgame came out. Mm-hmm. But I know generally it's like a 2-year rollover. But half a decade is quite a bit. It's not Avatar, 13 years or the fuck.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is stupid, and that movie is booty cheeks. But half a decade seems like a lot.
Yeah, I agree. It's a little surprising, but then again, it also kind of speaks to the series, or the trilogy that it held its ground. I think,
sure.
Through that time. That's almost would you say 8 years between the first and the third?
Yeah, 81 to 89.
Yeah, so, it still drew in the audience and, people anticipated it. So
yeah, these movies are fun.
A lot. Yeah.
And at the time, I don't think there was a ton of competition. I mean, there's other big films.
Yep.
But this was one of the bigger films that like Star Wars and like Back to the Future. There's some other ones I know. They're just saying a couple, but
yeah.
This is one of the big ends.
Yeah, especially for like a action adventure kind of movie. I think it did really well. So, and they were fun, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking when I was watching it. I was like, this is a fun movie. Like, specifically this one. The first and the third one, I think, are the most reminiscent to each other. And I think they did that on purpose because Temple of Doom was so dark, as they put it.
Yep.
And just, and also this was essentially the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark because the Temple of Doom was a prequel.
Right.
And I didn't know that till I watched it. I think we talked on that.
We talked a little bit about it. Yeah. It was a jump back in time.
Yeah.
They eliminated a lot of the need for character explanation and things like that. So by doing that, and I don't think that was the only reason, but it made it easier to do something different, but yet keep him, as that kind of character. Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Okay, so Reception of this film, I know it's not the same type of situation with the reception, being that it's an older film. Mm-hmm. You're getting people going backlogging, so to speak, on these review sites. Like IMDb gave it 8.2 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 83%. What I mean by that, like backlogging, is like new films, all the critics and fans are like in on the reviewing now. Like they didn't have these. Obviously, like the internet wasn't even out.
Right.
So like,
right.
But like they still will have critics will go back and review them to have it.
Kind of an updated.
Yeah, to have some continuity between films.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the ratings that they're giving, which I thought were reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I said, this is technically the sequel to the originators of the Raiders, the sequel to the original Raiders of the Lost Ark. And brief breakdowns: Indy's father goes missing, looking for the Holy Grail. So Indy has to go find his father and naturally the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail at the same time, right?
Which there was continuity between the first Raiders of the Lost Ark, right, where they're looking for the Ark of the Covenant, which is a biblical artifact, and then this is the Holy Grail, which is a biblical artifact.
Right.
Are there any other biblical artifacts on the top of your head that you can think of that are as iconic as those two?
Well, there are other things. I forget what they call it now, but I think it's the Holy Shroud or something like that. But it's like they believe it to be the cloth that Christ was buried in.
Oh, for real?
And it has a imprint of a man on it from the wounds and things like that. So they believe that was what he had on, and what he was buried in, basically.
Why was he buried in a shroud?
Well, I shouldn't say shroud. I'm sorry. It's more of a burial cloth type thing.
Like they wrapped him in it?
Yeah, and there's a special name for it. I apologize. I don't have that off the top of my head, but they wrapped him in it, and it's supposed to have his impression on the cloth or the linen or the material. Yeah. And it's really old. It's in, ancient burial wrap that they used, and it has the image of Christ's face and
the whole shebang,
his body and the wounds and all that stuff kind of imprinted or stained into the cloth. Yeah.
Does it claim to possess some sort of power like the other ones?
Well, I don't believe so. I've not heard of anything like that that goes with it. Like, because these ones, there's some interesting, like almost mythical powers and maybe even misdirected powers about it, but or legendary, kind of things. Kind of like in the movie, Indy's first reaction to the whole Holy Grail. It's a bedtime story type thing.
I like how they went full circle with that, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's other things out there too. Other historical artifacts that they've found that people want to put, different things on, and certain crucifixes and certain statues and things like that. So people can get carried away with some of that stuff. But
why do you think people do that?
I think they're searching and hoping. They want proof. They want evidence. They want physical evidence so they can say, yeah, see what I believe is real. I think that
which is ironic because they want to say that, look, it's real, but it also has this mythical power, which is not real.
Right.
But like, you know what I mean? It's like ironic in that notion.
Very, very much so.
Yeah, I wonder why the Ark, and more specifically the Holy Grail, has been so sought after and romanticized.
Yeah. I think the Ark, because it has, it supposedly had the 10 Commandments were in it, stored in it.
Stored in it.
Yeah, some other things were in it. That was prescribed by God for the Israelites to put those items in the Ark, to contain those and to have them preserved, so to speak. But also the power of God was supposed to be there along with it. So there was a real, if you go back, I don't know enough about it, and I'm sorry I don't know more. But you go back into the history of the Israelites and how important the Ark of the Covenant was to them, and how they treated it as a sacred, holy item, representing and holding the power of God in it, and having those specific items. There were a few other things that were in there too.
Such as?
Sorry, I don't.
No, it's all good.
Recall, but they were items similar to like they were important to the Israelites' history, like the tablets. To have the tablets with the 10 Commandments written on it. I mean, just the historical find would be, incredible to have that and be able to say, yeah, see, this is really what happened. These are the ones that Moses carried, to the Israelites, especially to, Jewish people, it would be huge, and it would also, I think a lot more people would react to that. Like, oh, it really did happen. Yeah. It's not just a book. So, so I think those things are what attracts people or what brings them into it, wants them to, or why they would search out,
Yeah, it makes sense.
Evidence.
Facts.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
So with this film, the way it opened up, I thought it was a iconic opening scene that offered development where Indy is a kid, played by River Phoenix, and you see the origin of the whip in his hat and his fear of snakes. I guess that was where it cultivated from.
I think so, because when he's in the cave at first with the other kid, that's like a Boy Scout or whatever they are. There's some sort of troop.
It was a Boy Scout, I think.
Boy Scouts, I think. And the other kid has a snake on him, and the kid starts freaking out. Indy just it's just a snake, and he grabs it and he throws it aside. It wasn't until shortly after that he ends up in that whole container full of snakes, and there's just hundreds of them in there, thousands probably.
There's so many.
Yeah, and that's when he freaks out.
Yeah,
and he ends up with one in his shirt and all that
Two,
stuff.
actually.
Two, that's right.
Because the second one saves him,
yes.
which I thought was ironic. The snake saves him.
Right. Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, like what does that mean? Like I thought that was almost counter to the character and how he wasn't scared of snakes, but like I didn't think that him falling in the thing of snakes would then make him scared of them.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just, I don't know. Because then it, like I said, it does save him.
It does.
And he is like freaked out by the one snake later that's in his shirt at first.
Yes.
So like maybe that is him now. He's scared of them because he was covered in them. Right. And then like one saves him, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just when they were trying to explain why Indy is the way he is, some of the things didn't seem cohesive. Like the snake thing, kind of, right? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. The whip thing was cool.
Yes, how he got the scar on his
and then
across his chin.
Yeah, and it like saved him from a lion, which was dope. And then the hat thing. Okay, the artifact hunter or whatever the fuck he was, the bandit,
right,
gave him the hat, and he was wearing the hat still.
Yeah,
he didn't like that guy. Why would he wear the hat?
I think because there was a part of that guy that he liked. I think his because
humility almost.
Indy's style almost kind of geared toward that whenever he went on his adventures, almost like he took on a different not personality, but a different like a different
Crusade or like,
exactly like an alter
he
ego
said
type
kid
thing.
Too.
Yes,
and he took like some of his vernacular too, because he did remind. I thought it was Harrison Ford
at the first. Beginning. That's what I think they want you to believe, and then all of a sudden you look at him, and you go, "Oh, that's not him." But do you notice he had a scar on his cheek?
Yeah,
so there was like this rough and tough adventurer, explorer, bandit. Guy that's just looking for those world famous artifacts to make money. Whereas Indy had always been.
Then he's in a museum.
Yeah. I like the response of the other guy when he, the second time he takes the cross from him, and he says, that needs to be in a museum, and he goes, "So do you, Jones." It's great. It's kind of like saying you're ancient. What are you thinking? Why does it need to be preserved?
Yeah, there's this irony where things that need to be in a museum can be, what's the correct like adjective? Like it's like invasive of sorts, where like people steal the artifacts to put in a museum when like they don't belong to that society. Like say an American Indiana Jones takes some shit from Saudi Arabia or where the fuck.
Yeah.
they're taking artifacts from, and they bring it back and put it in a museum in the United States. Like that belongs to that other country,
to that people's culture and that people's,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's like that's
sure.
kind of funny to me.
Yeah,
I think there's some sort of phrase for that, or like defining whatever.
Yeah, just take it.
Where's Milo
like,
when you need him?
Yeah,
shout out to Milo.
There is definitely I'm sure, a term for doing that. You know.
Yeah, it's like I think it's become more.
It's like marauders who go in and steal from other cultures.
And to bring back it's like you stole that shit.
Look at what we have. We're showing everybody. Isn't this great? Yeah. No, you stole it to get
it. Yeah. Sorry for not knowing what that is, but. Yeah, great opening scene. And I thought when they all show up at Indy's house and his pops doesn't want to talk to him, and then the sheriff shows up with the bandits and he doesn't even come out of his office.
Yeah, his father?
To address the situation, which I'm assuming they did that because they didn't want to show Sean Connery's age. They couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. They didn't have any,
I think that might have been part of that. I also think they were trying to establish the lack of intimacy in their relationship too. Like that was another part of that. Like they didn't have to show him, right at that moment. They wanted to bring him in later on, and show him later on. But they also they wanted to develop. There was a distance between the son and father.
I think you're right.
Yeah, and that was part of the conflict between the two of them. His dad was always, lost in his work and what he was trying to prove and find and discover, and Indy just wanted him to be his dad, at times, can't you help me out? Can't you protect me? Can't you be there for me? So I think it really established that right up front, especially, but you're right, because he never even comes out.
Yeah. There's like a sheriff and bandits that show up.
Yeah. And some guy pulls up in front of the house in the car.
And it's not a big home. Yeah. Let's be real.
It's very tiny.
It's like, I'm talking 800 square feet.
Yeah.
And like, he's
maybe.
Like, I don't give a fuck. And then like, essentially his son gets robbed, like in their living room, essentially.
Pretty much.
And he doesn't even come out of his office.
Yeah.
Because he's busy doodling like his fantasy of trying to find, which essentially the thing he was doodling was like the mosaic.
Yes.
Stained glass shit that's in the library.
Exactly.
That's like got the tablet below or whatever. Which I was going to ask you, do you ever, when you first watched the film and watching it this time, do you ever feel that he figures shit out too quickly? And I think I said this on the other episodes, but Indy gets in the library and he just finds the tablets below.
Yeah.
Does that...
I don't know if that was for conserving, time in the movie.
Which I get.
Which is probably part of that. But also they're trying to portray him as being clever and smart when it comes to the discovery side of archaeology, because it's always about how do we find these things, what brings us to these things. And then there's almost like this treasure map. So I think that it's kind of that too. They want it to be they want your imagination to kind of play along and say, oh, wow, that's really cool. That's great. Because the first time I saw it, I didn't think it was too quick. But it's funny you say that. The second, third, fourth time I saw it, I'm like, wow, that happened really fast.
He's like, look, on this mosaic, is mosaic the wrong? He's like 2, 3, 10. I think it's 2, 3, 10. And then he's like, to the left and right of him on the columns, it has 2, 3, and he's like 10. He's standing on 10, which I like the play on. Nothing is ever X marks the spot on a map. And
I was going to say something about that too, right?
That's cool. Yeah. But it just was really quick that he figured that out. And it just was like, okay.
And he was almost surprised when he sees it. Not surprised, but surprised because he had said before, X never marks a spot.
And then to
go up there and he's like, X marks the spot. And he almost kind of, okay. Like he had to accept that he was wrong. It was good. But he did discover it really quickly. And, but sometimes, clues fall into place when all the right pieces are there.
Fair.
Trying to, maybe make it more acceptable. But that does happen.
It's just
in life sometimes.
No one would have figured this out. Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. There needs to be more X marks the spots like in our day to day.
Yes.
That would be convenient.
Be great.
I liked when he was smashing the floor and the librarian
dude
was, he was like, what the fuck? I was like, this is funny. This librarian is like, because like, how would you make that? Like, it was a clever write up on how he would be able to smash this, you know, not iconic, but like,
historical building that was once a church and is now a library, and it's supposed to be quiet, and he's in there slamming away on a 3-inch chunk of marble.
3 times he hit it though, and it was just like funny. Like, I thought that was cool. I like see, like, that's like one of those moments where they could have done like that quirkiness was, I liked it. And in those moments in films when they do something different than say what they did in this film, I get mad. I'm like, you could have written it better. And this is one of those cases where it's like the quirk was good and it was
funny.
It was good. Yeah, it was funny. And I think when I talk about quirk too, that I thought Indiana Jones, it being an 80s film and just some of the comedic relief and stuff in the other films, including this one, like, I thought the quirk and everything came together the best that I've seen. And like, there wasn't cheesy, corny moments for me. I thought top to bottom, it was really well put together and they checked all the boxes and it was good. And that being one moment.
Yeah, I think you're right about that too, because it was a much more natural humor. It didn't feel pushed or forced, or it wasn't too cheesy. It was just legitimately funny. Like, you found yourself laughing at stuff that was easy to laugh at. And that was one of those things that I thought was, I got a real kick out of it, especially when he gets to the end after his third one and he goes, I think I'm going to put that down, and he sets it up top and like, doesn't want to touch it for a few, It was great.
I appreciated in this film how, like they did in the other ones too, where they had real animals, and from like rats to snakes to lions. Yeah. And it creates a more real feel. And we talked about it on Temple of Doom, where they're in the tomb within the palace, and the woman has to like have centipedes on her, and like bugs and insects. And in this one, there was the same thing with Elsa. She had like a rat in her hair, and there was a fuckload of rats.
Yes. And
the River Phoenix, I'm pretty sure he fell in a pile of snakes.
Yeah, it was.
There was a lion in that motherfucker. There was some crocodiles, and I appreciate the effort, because sometimes, especially in this day and age, it's CGI. But in this, it just made it real, made it feel real. Yeah. And I think that's something that maybe people don't acknowledge necessarily, but that's what makes the film feel so real, and why I think people love Indiana Jones so much, because he's battling the elements. He's battling all different adverse conflicts, whether it's nature or Nazis or whatever. Right. Like, he's really facing that shit, and it helps.
And that I one of the things I noticed that I think is really cool about all of the films, but in this one they did a really good job with the transition. Like, he has huge levels of bad luck at different times, but he's not really concerned about it until the very moment it happens. And maybe not bad luck, maybe that's not the right way to put it, but like something seriously bad happens to him, or his surroundings, or
like when they light the petroleum,
like they light the petroleum, all of a sudden that's, oh, what am I going to do? And he immediately is like, grab the coffin, flip it over, jump under the water, climb underneath it so that all the fire goes over them and they don't get burned. So there's like, without having, I mean, what I'm trying to say, the point I'm trying to make is he has these terrible things happen, but then he has really good luck with being able to recover from it. Like, there's always something there that he's able to turn into a good thing.
He's like, good on his feet for sure, but he's also negligent.
Yes. He's very negligent.
He's like, oh, there's a hole in the he's like, library. Oh, I think the tomb's under here. Busts the hole in the library, and then just hops down, leaves his friend up there, I guess.
Marcus,
yeah, and then there's just a hole in the middle of the library, and then the protectors of the Holy Grail end up showing up.
Yes.
But yeah, he just doesn't really think about it. He just is a go-getter, you could say, but involves negligence in a lot of cases that get him to these issues where he has to think quick on his feet and solve the problem. But don't give him too much credit. He's definitely negligent as fuck.
Very much so. And he's like one of them people that like goes through all these things like, all right, I just have to do this. And then he needs someone to come in behind him with a shovel and scoop up the shit, you know?
Facts.
Like he leaves a trail behind him every time he does something. And so,
almost always.
Yeah. And it's cool though, because he always does quickly, you know, flies on his feet, you know, discovers something that'll help him. Like, you know, they're in the, you know, the blimp and stuff like that. And they jump into the plane. Later on, we'll probably get into that. But, you know, it's just there's always something there that he finds or discovers or uses to get him out of the shit that he got himself into.
Just constant. Constant. Yeah, the blimp thing had me thinking. I ended up looking up like why we don't use blimps because it seemed pretty cool in there. Mm-hmm. And they're just really expensive to use blimps.
Yeah. Very dangerous, too, if something goes wrong.
I think that's the thing, too. Yeah. And I thought I read there was only 25 blimps remaining. I don't know if that's in the United States or what. Like, I'll look it up.
Because in that one, I don't know if they were kind of trying to play off from the Hindenburg event where the disaster of the Hindenburg where it crashed and blew up and all that stuff. Because I think it's hydrogen that they're filled with, if I'm not mistaken. You know, I could be wrong, but helium. Thank you.
And there's only 25 left in existence, allegedly.
Really? Okay.
The Goodyear blimp is one of them.
Yep.
But yeah, they're like...
Which you don't see that often. I mean, they occasionally will fly it over a race.
It's expensive, I guess.
Or, like, you know, football stadium or whatever. But because they used to do it on all kinds of them and film from the Goodyear blimp. And I think maybe technology helped with that where they have the drones and the flyover cameras and things like that they can use instead of having the Goodyear blimp cruise over with their camera. Yeah, because a lot of that was film stuff for races and like the Super Bowl and things like that. It was, you know, they had a camera view from the blimp over the stadium.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I believe that sounds true. Because like the drone thing was not in the 80s.
Definitely not. Nothing like that. And
even they'd have to use planes.
Yes.
I would assume they use planes.
Right. Or helicopters or whatever. Something like that maybe.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, so back on to like using real animals and stuff. I just wanted to give a shout out in this film as well for the commitment to the actors. Because like I feel like they had to have that commitment level and really be about it. And that's cool. Like I feel like sometimes actors nowadays have it too easy. Like they have their own stuntman, they CGI everything. Like they just have to be in there in dialogue sequences. Like these people have to have like this woman had rats in her hair.
Right,
like,
that's pretty serious.
That's like you're committed. Like you're like that's dope, and I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. Committed, because I mean you've got to be willing to go the extra mile when you're actually going to have rats crawling across your neck.
Yeah, like and there's a ton of rats around.
Huge amount.
Tons of there's like all these different critters and shit. So
yeah,
like,
and when she's in the boat not in the boat, but under the coffin cover. Or the coffin.
There's rats all up in
and
the
they're coming through the holes on the, you know, in falling down and swimming around her in the water as she's underneath this trapped space.
Yeah, and River Phoenix falls in the snake pit.
Yes. They're all over him.
That would I wouldn't want to do that particularly.
Not at all.
That's what I'm saying. These people were like in it to win
kind of fear factor stuff.
For real. Shout out to Rogan.
Yep.
But yeah, no, so I just, yet again, like you don't see that a lot. And like watching it, it made me appreciate it because it makes it feel real.
Yeah.
Like, this is dope.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and we were talking briefly how there was like continuity between the first and the third one. And I just think they did a good job in this trilogy where there's a lot of cohesion and the formulas that are used are well executed. And because you get the treasure hunting, to mysteries, to chase scenes, to Nazis, to outraged women. And
right.
Naturally, you get fighting around moving propellers.
Yes.
I think in every single movie.
That was so great.
Like every movie, there's this moving propeller where they have to like someone's about to get murked.
Yeah, and the conveyor belt thing too.
In the second one, right?
Yes, they kind of translated that into the belts of the, or the the tracks of the tank.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
And it's kind of the same thing with that as well as the propeller thing.
Love it.
They're actually, and one of the guys actually rolls over and gets mushed, and they don't show the blood like they did in the second one, but
they went hard in the second one.
Yeah, but in this one, you just know he got mashed. Being mashed by a tank would be pretty serious. More people
have done that than probably the roller thing or
probably.
Propeller.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Yeah, but that and then the propeller thing was very cool because they did the same scene. They're fighting and they're going back and forth, only it's a boat propeller, which is huge.
I love that though because it was the boat was getting destroyed. And then it was cool too in that same scene, in that moment, the protector of the Grail is like, "No, Indy, you make the choice," and he was like, "Fuck, you're right. All right, we're out of here," because that dude was committed.
Yeah, he was ready to die at that point. He didn't care. He's like, I know where I'm. I know I'm all set. It's like he knew that he was eternally going somewhere good.
I mean, if the Holy Grail was a real thing and they knew how real it was, I probably would be good too. Like, you can kill me, bro. I already know like what's good with it.
Yeah, it's good.
I love the relationship between Indy and his father.
It was great.
It was so real of a relationship. Yes. Like, I think the cast was incredible.
Yep.
And I think Sean Connery is incredible. I think, may he rest in peace. I think, I don't know his whole catalog by any means, but like anytime I see him in anything, like one of my favorite films is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Mm-hmm. It was actually his last film. But watching him in this film, he didn't like steal the screen. Because, I mean, Harrison Ford's got a good presence, but like Sean Connery's a fucking man. Yeah. Like, he's so cool, and I feel both Harrison Ford and Sean Connery knew their character and executed so well. Like, I believed that was father-son, and their banter and exchanges throughout the film were so great.
Yeah.
And was so fun. Nothing was, like, uncomfortable or quirky or didn't make sense. Everything was true to the characters and well executed, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was neat because there was a concern by casting him because he was so fresh on the Bond movies.
Was he though in '89?
Yes, yeah, he was.
Why? When did he do the Bond movies?
Well, he was well known for being James Bond at that point, and because he had taken over that character throughout that time, I think, and so there was a concern.
No, he did that shit in the '60s.
But even through, it wasn't even longer than that. Was it Roger?
Okay.
Yeah, because he was.
No, listen, he came back.
Yeah,
because he left. Roger Moore did one or something like that, or two, right. And he came back and he said, "Never say never again." In '83, which this is '89, so it was a half a decade.
Yeah, so people really remember him as that.
He's James Bond.
He's James Bond. How can he be this almost clumsy professor scientist kind of character that's almost goofy in ways or inadequate in physical combat and things like that?
He crushed it.
He was so good at it.
Sean Connery's a fucking man.
Because he was more of a thinker. In all these moments.
The umbrella and the briefcase that he carried with him throughout the film helped.
Yes, it did.
And then he used the umbrella to scare the birds, and then
that was so cool, wasn't it?
Crashed the plane. Yeah, it was great. It's fucking absolutely
Which is a real problem.
Definitely, it was believable.
That's a real problem for planes. Is bird
a fuckload of birds.
What do you call it? Bird crashes, but yeah, bird impacts are really serious for planes. So it was like the perfect way to get out of that situation.
Yeah, and that's yet again, I think, a good thing that they wrote in the story where it made sense.
Yeah.
And it brought the umbrella into play. And it was just like, it was the moment you realized that this dude is the shit. Because he kind of been tagging along, and then he saved them because they were fucked.
They were. At that moment, they were on a beach with a warplane coming down on them. Yeah. They're going to be dead. Yeah. But that was cool. And it's funny, too, because they were actually, I found out they were pretty close in age. Even though they don't look it in the film. Yeah, they were not that far apart in age. So it made,
I wonder,
it was they were a little concerned about that too, but the way they played the character so well, and, I think they were both equally, like, they nailed it. Both of them nailed it in their depiction of the person they were supposed to be. Him, and little things that made Harrison Ford seem like a son. Like when he says, "Yes, sir," the first time
Junior,
he gets junked over the head with the vase there, and he stands up and he goes, "Junior," and he goes, "Yes, sir." It's almost like this level of high respect of, when he was out of line, his dad would, straighten him out.
It was only 12 years apart
in real age,
yeah.
Right? That's not very much if you think about it. So, but that was cool too, and then. Yeah, I like that, how he called him Junior. It must have been
that's what I'm saying. They like
12, 15 times, something like that in the movie.
And he hates it. That's what I'm saying. The dynamic between the two it was incredible. And I honestly think the reason this film was so awesome, because I do think it's an awesome movie.
Yeah.
Even though it's aged, it's still pretty good. Sean Connery made the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, if he's not in the film, it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, essentially.
Pretty much. Right.
Like,
right.
It's
I think it brought that whole father-son thing into it. Like the because there was a disconnect between the two of them for years.
They didn't talk for 20, they said.
Yeah. So to have that, and then to have the Grail actually be the thing that brings them back together, even though Indy hated the whole idea of the Grail, because that was such a frustrating thing for him, because his father was so committed to it and finding it and going through all the process of locating it. It took his dad away from him in all those moments that he wanted him, or wanted to have a relationship with him as a young man. So I think that movie was as much about that as it was about the adventure.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And I think that's what was kind of cool. And then you sprinkle in some of the fun moments, like the chase scene with the bike and the cart. And he's just sitting, Sean Connery is just sitting in the cart with his briefcase. Yo, it's the best chase scene in all of the movies. And there's some good chase scenes in the movies. But
there are.
That is such a funny one, because Sean Connery is just like chilling.
Yeah. And then he looks up and when Indy finally gets the last guy to, crash and disappear, takes care of it.
Yeah.
He looks over his dad and he's all proud, and Sean Connery looks up at him like,
he's not impressed.
Not impressed at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Yeah. He's like, okay, I guess we just did that.
Yep.
Love it. Did you know, actually, before I get into that, talk about chase scenes and shit like that, the when they dip out from the blimp, the plane special effects have aged terribly. When they leave the blimp with the getaway plane, that whole sequence is bad.
It is.
It looked like shit.
Yeah,
and I know
it's like when he's putting his hand out and saying 12 o'clock.
Yeah, it's bad.
And you can see the outline of his hand on the screen.
It's bad.
It's pretty horrible.
Yeah. Which is weird, because like the rest of the film was pretty good.
Yep.
The plane stuff they did and the whole film was just bad.
It was.
It did not look good. It aged really terribly, which is okay, but it's just
the one snake scene where the snake pops out of the water is pretty bad.
But I like it. I like the fake snake.
Yeah, it's pretty bad though too.
They're like,
yeah,
that one,
yeah.
Like out of the water, quick. Like it was just chilling under there. Yeah.
Like what's it doing in the water?
It was that shit's funny. Yeah. I like it though, because it's just like I don't know, maybe I like that. Because
the shock factor was certainly good.
That, and like I like how it tells the age of the film. It's like a fun, like, because everything else is real except that one snake, and it's like, oh, that's kind of funny because that snake looks so fake.
Yes,
but like
compared to all the real ones that are sliming all around him. That was pretty good.
Okay, so did you know Dr. The Elsa woman?
Mm-hmm.
Did you know she was
Schneider,
evil?
Dr. Schneider. I questioned it at the very beginning.
The first time you had seen it?
When they first met her, I was like, oh, you can't tell if she's going to be a good or a bad character. She's almost too good to be good. Like this.
Why? Because of the way that she foreplayed?
Well, all of that. Yeah.
Like she can't be real. Like, his foreplay is way too on point.
Yes. Yeah.
That's fair.
It was like, okay, wait a minute. What's going on with her?
She's way too
Who
good
is she?
Like,
and the way she jumps down in the hole, she's so anxious and ambitious to get into that nastiness of where the rats are. And
she a dirty bitch,
you know,
for sure.
And it's like, okay, her character is way too, into
way too
trying to find,
like she's working, she's sucking someone else's dick. Like,
yes, yeah. But it was great.
It was her father's dick apparently because they both slept with her.
Yeah, like
which it's hilarious.
Yes, and
I loved that.
He says, "Well, it's just like the next guy," and he goes, "I was the next guy,"
She whispering in, starts making out with Harrison Ford, and she's like, "It was really great." And then Sean Connery is like, he's back too because they're tied up. Yeah. It was really great. Yeah. And then,
well, thank you.
And then he's like, oh shit, it's talking about fucking my son. That's fucked up.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great dynamic.
It was fun too because it was like, because Sean Connery says, we're both finally doing the same adventures. That's what he called it. We're doing the same adventures.
Same bitches too.
Yes. So it was great. And I got a kick out of that when he says, "Don't trust her."
Yeah.
She's a Nazi.
And she talks in her sleep.
And he didn't know that until later when they're tied up. And he goes, "How did you know?"
Talks in her sleep.
She talks in her sleep.
Yeah. Like, pimp. Sean Connery's a man. Love that shit.
That's a little bit of the James Bond coming out in him.
Fair. Yeah.
He's still got the swag.
Definitely. Did you know that Walter was evil?
The
guy that hires
Donovan. Yeah, Walter Donovan. I think was his name. Yeah. I wasn't sure at all. I was kind of, curious about who he was because he seemed too
willing or helpful.
Like he had too much stuff already planned and in play. Like
word.
And had he had the half of the stone.
Yeah, they were halfway through their journey.
Yeah.
Quest, as he put it.
You could tell he had already been involved, pretty serious with it. And, but then he says, "Oh, it is your dad is the one that we hired. He's the man we're looking for." You don't know that they didn't really hire him to go and do that, to find the map or whatever to find the tomb. I mean, to
because they wanted his diary.
Yes. And, and I think that's where you start to kind of almost question a little bit about who's this character? Who is he? Is he a good guy or bad guy? And he was kind of in between, I think. You could almost...
I was focused on the fact that the transition and the storytelling of how Indiana Jones would include his father in a journey and how it made a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Where like this guy's like, we hired your father... So, like, I'm assuming you want to go find him. So I thought I was kind of intrigued on that notion because I was like, oh, this is a good premise. This is a good story.
Right.
And now I'm like more invested because I like where this is going versus like some clunky, his father just shows up at his work or something stupid. Like it was a cool progression with the story because they tied in with going back to when he first finds that crucifix and his father is drawing the fucking shit. Like everything was tied in and put together really well.
Yeah, I think so too.
I was sucked in on that type of like storytelling. So I wasn't concerned with Walter Donovan's take. Like I was suspicious of the chick for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other guy wasn't.
Yeah, not so much. It was almost like he was directing them, especially the first time I saw it. After I've seen it once, you kind of know that he's a bad guy.
Yeah, no shit.
But kind of, I remember him. The first time though wasn't so like it wasn't so easy to spot. Obviously, no shit. Yeah. But the first time watching it is like you almost think, oh, this guy's working with him to get him back to his father.
So let me ask you this: what was the gap of time from the last time that you watched The Last Crusade?
I watched it not that long ago.
How many years?
Oh, just recently, like within the past several months.
Really?
Yeah. I went through.
Was it when we
about
reviewed?
The time when we reviewed the last one, but it was actually like a couple weeks before that. I had just randomly decided to watch all four of them. because I hadn't seen them for a while, and I said, you know what, those are all good movies. Let's watch them. Go through them, one by one. And I had gone through all 4 of them, and then oddly enough, we got talking and decided to do the Temple of Doom, and then now this one. And it wasn't that long ago that I saw it. Before that was probably, I would say good 15 years or so, or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a long time ago.
How many times have you seen the 4th one?
The 4th one I've seen twice, I think. Yeah, I don't think I've seen it 3 times. I've seen it twice. I just watched it recently. I went to the theater to see it with a group of us, got together and went to see it. And then I saw that one again just recently, a couple months ago. So, yeah. Kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think John Smith's coming on the episode, like we've talked about, for the 4th one. What's it called? Crystal Skull? Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, yeah.
So, fast forwarding to the end, basically, when they get to the location of the Holy Grail, I really appreciated the set design and the way they packaged the situation. As in, you had to choose which grail, and if you chose the wrong grail, you get R.I.P. You're dead.
Yeah, eternal damnation,
You're dead.
As the knight said. Yeah.
And I liked how the knight was there because that tied into the fairy tale, and he had been there the whole time, and whatever.
Was waiting for his relief,
so
to speak. Like he knew his time. He become weak, and his time had passed. And even though he was, eternally there, he knew that there would come a day when he wouldn't be, and because his of his strength failing him. Even though, and that I kind of didn't quite understand totally, because
it doesn't work all the way.
It's supposed to give you eternal life and eternal youth, and yet
probably limitations.
Yeah. I assume because of his humanity, I guess maybe.
I just thought because he'd been there for like half a century, half a fucking what's 1,000 years? What is that?
Sad. I don't know.
I know we're uneducated.
I got decade down. I got century. I got century down.
1,000 years. What is that? Come on.
I think they call it a minute.
It's not a millennium. Is it a millennium?
I don't believe so.
Last 1,000 years. That's a millennium. So he's been there for half a millennium.
Okay.
Which sounds like a long time. So
yes, it does.
I assume the fucking lasting effects only last so long. And he couldn't leave, which was interesting. But I liked how there was limitations to the Holy Grail, where you couldn't go past the seal and the tomb or whatever.
Right. The cost. That was the cost of having the Holy Grail and drinking from the so-called fountain of youth almost.
Which, this is what I would do, is I'd build a house on that motherfucker. And so I would just drink my juice and that shit and just build a house in there, like for real. Like so,
once a day, be able to see outside, because that'd be the worst part, I think, being in the cave.
I would assume I'd amassed a certain amount of wealth so that I could build this utopia of my establishment.
If you were to do that, though, you'd be basically exposing the place, that it was hidden.
I wouldn't tell nobody.
But if you build, so you're saying build a place that's all underground, no one would know.
No, I would, because I'd be so wealthy, I would take the rocks out.
Oh,
so there would be like, it would drop down in. I'd have like my whole spot. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I gotcha. But that's where you'd go down and get your drink a day.
Yeah,
and
I'd have plenty of pools, entertainment. I'd fly everybody in. We'd be good.
It'd be great. What a party place.
They fucked up. Like, that's what I would have done.
Yeah. Would you think of the? I mean, because this is where the whole father-son thing kind of comes to a cap. When
a cap.
Like it's completed or a conclusion.
You're welcome.
And they go in, or Indy goes in, because he has to save his father's life. He has to go get the cup, the grail, and fill it with the water from the fountain there and get it back to him so he'll be healed, because he's dying, because he got shot. on purpose to force Indy to do what he had to do.
On purpose. Yeah. Fucking Walter. It was Walter?
So, yeah.
Fucking Walter.
Yeah. What a douchebag.
He is such a cunt.
But he forces Indy's hand, and he has to do that. He has to go get it. He has to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And he goes through the 3 steps, the 3 different trials or booby traps, challenges, whatever they are. And he gets there. And I like how when Walter and the Dr. Schneider come through after him, they basically follow him because he solved the riddles. And they come in, and Walter, he's so corrupt in his thinking, and so is she, which is revealed in that moment. They picked the wrong.
She did it on purpose.
Grail. You think she did it on purpose?
She totally. Walter is tripping for trusting her, but I thought it was redeeming because I felt like she was trying to look out for Indy and herself. Yeah. She's like, fuck this guy, because she said she's not with the cause of the Nazis. So I look at it as her, like, she was probably looking at it for herself, but also like, I'd rather be with Indy than with these assholes. So like, let's kill this motherfucker, take him out the equation. Because the way they pan the camera and show her expression, it alludes to the fact that she misled him. I think she was trying to have some sort of redemption with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I hadn't thought of that. I had thought, she was still kind of corrupt and
she is. She be fucking sons and fathers in the same week and shit. Like, she's fucked up.
Right.
She's fucked up.
But she was also an Aussie, right? She was from
Austria.
Yes, and so she was not fully tied in. And remember when she was at the book burning, she was really crying. Upset and crying and heartbroken over that.
Which I like that.
That kind of told you there was still hope for her. She wasn't fully
and she let Indy go.
Over.
She's like, I could just scream because I could just squeeze right now. She's like, I could just scream. And she didn't. So I felt like her character dynamic was really cool too. And I think the characters in this film in general were way more well-rounded and interesting. Like, she could have fucked him over right then, and there was like this mutual okay, because she wasn't in it for the Nazis. She wasn't a Nazi. She was just trying to get this Holy Grail. So maybe the youth is what she was seeking, but I think she did love Indy, and so she did some things out of love, and it translated differently in different situations. But like her killing Walter,
yes. Yeah, no, I hadn't really thought of that. So that's good. That's a good take on that for sure. And I think that her inability to separate the desire for the Grail, is what obviously ended up killing her.
She was like, dick or eternal life.
Right.
Like she tried to have both, and then she should have just chose dick because the Grail got her killed.
Yes.
There was a moment where she was like, dick, eternal life, and she was like, eternal life, and she died. So like, you can't have that. She should have just.
And it was funny though, because then Indy had the same.
Yeah, he was like, family, eternal life. And his dad, Sean Connery delivered those lines so well because he said it so calmly.
Yep.
That took Indy out of his moment of greed, you could say, or lust for this concept of eternal life, and it brought him back, which I think is a nice sentiment with like a father leading the son to the path of righteousness, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
Well, I liked how. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and he calls him Indiana for the first time.
Oh, word! I didn't catch
he
that.
Says Junior all the way up to that point, and then when he's trying to, show him that the cup is not worth it, it's just an item, and he says to him in that moment, Indiana, and like you said, very calmly, and that's when Indy kind of goes and turns his head and looks up at him.
Which is there?
It catches him. And
is there some sort of sentiment in tie-in with like God lending out His hand, like the Father trying to
Sure.
I mean, you're the religious man. That's why I asked.
Yeah, I think that's because there's scriptures that say, once you belong to me, nothing can snatch you from my hand. So there is a real connection there in that moment that the Father is holding on to the Son and won't let him go.
Swag.
And
I like it.
Pulls him in, and the more important thing is that relationship between Indiana and his dad than the actual finding and saving the cup or taking the cup or whatever.
I almost would call it lust, honestly.
Yeah, there's definitely that desire. Yeah, you're right. It becomes that.
Yeah. Which I think it's also profound on some level because he doesn't even have a relationship with his father, per se. Or
Right.
like he desires more or wanted more. And then there's that irony on the blimp where he's like, I don't even know what to say to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then like at the end, it's like he chooses his father and family because there is love. And it's like, I think there's a nice sentiment in there where like love isn't always what you think it is or what you desire. It's just what it needs to be or some shit like that. You know what I mean? And like, even in a time of desperation of lust, like you can hopefully traverse through to like what is best.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Precisely.
Word.
Got him.
It's one of those really serious things too, you know, as far as relationships go.
Well,
it's like father-son thing. It's so huge and so important in the development of the son, you know, that there's that, you know, that moment that he reconnects, I think, ultimately. Because like you said on the blimp, he's like, oh, he can't think of anything to say. Well, what do you want to talk about?
I love it.
And then he goes, well, what's the problem then?
I love it because that was just another one of those situations that I just thought, you know, paid such strong homage to like real dynamics of real people and like real conversations.
Real life stuff.
Yeah. And I was just like, this is great, so great. And that's what I talked about. I was like, the relationship with the women, to his father, to like everything was just so spot on. Like everything was dialed in. It was really fucking cool.
It was
appreciated it. It was excellent for sure.
Yep.
I like how he was like, what's a carpenter cup look like?
Yeah. He went to the cup that was
the most humble looking.
Yes. It was very well crafted, but it was very simple.
It was no gold. No gold. It was wood.
It wasn't anything that was
gaudy.
You know, glamorous.
Gaudy.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'm trying to help you over here, goddamn it. Come on.
Take
my hand.
It wasn't like a treasure. You know, it didn't look like a treasure.
It looked wooden, wasn't it?
Well, I think it was definitely lined with the gold on the inside. But it was definitely looked like a little beat up or a little like rustic. Almost. Yeah. Like it wasn't.
I like that cup. Yeah. I'd have a set of them, to be honest with you.
That was wicked cool. I liked it better than any of the other cups in there. You know, it seemed like easy to handle. And
you're like when Elsa pulled that other cup, I was like, that cup is totally not the cup.
Yes.
It's got, I think it had like emeralds. I was like, God didn't fucking rock with emeralds.
Right.
Like, come on.
Well, especially if you
diamonds, goddamn.
You think of the life of Christ and the way it's, you know, depicted in scripture and, you know, that he was a man of humility. And, you know, why would he have this
gaudy cup? If anything, I would think it'd be rubies for blood.
Yes.
Like maybe. The fact that it had, I think, emeralds in it.
Yeah.
I was like, that's definitely not it.
Yeah.
That Walter was way too trusting of her.
He
didn't even
too.
question.
He was like, yes, that's the cup of a king.
Yeah,
that was his response.
And that's why I think I like the underlying theme sometimes with this film particularly is just like his lust got the best of him, you know. He's like, okay, yes, I'm so ready for this.
Right.
And I like how in all the Indiana Jones films, referring to the first three, there's always some supernatural element to the end of the film. Mm-hmm. Where like when he drinks the cup, there's always like this dehumanizing / like rotting or explosion of human heads and like they turn to skeletons and it's really good effects, practical effects, I think, with a lot of them in this case, but it looked great and I like that supernatural element that they sprinkle in at the end. Yeah. It's not overdone. I like it.
Yeah, well, it's a because you know, if you think about, you know, if these things are real, you know, in you know, the cup is real, then there is some supernatural element to it.
Yeah.
You know, so it fits the story and it fits, you know, maybe even the truth behind some of it. You know, if there is such a thing as, you know, the supernatural element to the life we live.
And these artifacts.
Yes.
As a Christian. Do you consider yourself a Christian?
Yes.
What's your take on the Holy Grail?
I've never really read much about it or heard much about it. It's supposedly the cup that he drank from in the Last Supper, and then also that it captured some of his blood when he was on the cross and things like that. I mean, there's different.
Do you think that if that was the case, that it would have some sort of?
I don't. I don't think so. I think because like a lot of these things that we hear about like that, it becomes an item or almost a thing that people would almost hold as equal to God or as something they should, pray before and, almost become the item of worship instead of. So I don't think that in my own kind of feeling about it is I don't see God as wanting that stuff around because it would lead to that kind of thing. Like people would idolize it and, almost put it on a Temple Mount, kind of thing. Or,
Idolize.
Yeah, definitely. Just make it to be the item that's of importance. And that's not his purpose wasn't to have that happen. So it detracts from who he is. And
like he a jealous God, he says.
It says that, yes. Yeah. So, yeah.
Is it? Oh,
yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah.
Is there anything in this film that you want to touch on?
I just think it definitely they hit the goal, which I think was to really tell the story of a father and son who come together through life's experiences, even though they were separated by the very same thing,
including fucking the same women.
Yeah. Yes. Right. I mean, how
they come together.
How many dad and sons can say
in the
that?
Same bitch. Shout out to Elsa, goddammit.
And they're. I mean, and the mother gets mentioned a little bit in there, and Connery, says, well, to be fair, she never told me she was ill. I didn't know she was ill. So there's this, this disconnect that happened as a result of some real life experiences. And I think they really did well putting it all together in the story, that it wasn't just about the Grail. It was really more about the relationship between the two of them and how they kind of came back together as a result of searching for the Grail, which, is, I think, kind of, that's how we go through life. We, in some ways we're trying to, when that happens, we're trying to reconnect somehow. And a lot of times it could be something that just brings them back together. So I think they hit that one out of the park.
Nail on the cross.
Yes.
I think this is the best Indiana Jones film of the four.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall the fourth that well, but we're gonna review that soon. And but I mean, you can't go wrong with Sean Connery.
No, I think I agree with you on the best of the four for sure. Partly because of Sean Connery, I think.
I think it's a big proponent. Like he plays his role. It's not he's not oversaturation of him. It's just like he adds such a unique part because of. I don't know if it's just he's so charismatic or what the fuck it is, but he's just the fucking man. Like I feel like he's one of the first manly mans or whatever, how you would say that. Because like in the 60s, he was the first James Bond. Like that's like the most G shit ever. And he's in this as like the father of Indiana Jones and has such a strong presence. And the things he adds to the film, it's like not even his typical James Bond shit in this case. It's like his scholar and his humility and his fatherliness.
Wisdom.
Which is cool. Yeah. And he's like 12 years older than Indiana Jones. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think what he was able to project in the film as an actor was impressive. And I think pays so much tribute to the trilogy when it first was a trilogy and made, I think, people adore Indiana Jones even more. Because I'm not like a fan per se, but just like watching, it's like, this made it what it was, in my opinion, like this film, and he attributed to that drastically.
Very much so. Yeah, I agree. His character was so well played, and that did make the film. That made it. Yeah, and he didn't. And it was so cool because he didn't come across as like a weak person or as a inept person.
He was just like independent, doing his thing.
He was like locked into his passion.
Which is dope, respectable.
Yeah. So I think that's great. He did it well.
Rest in peace, Sean Connery. You're fucking dope as fuck.
For sure.
What do you rate this film?
I would say that this film is at least a 7.9 for me, just because.
At least, or is?
Yeah, I'll say a 7.9.
A 7.9.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really solid film.
Okay.
And it was good. It had good storyline. They portrayed it well. The characters played their roles perfectly. I thought maybe that's a little low. Maybe that's a little low.
I don't want to sway you, but I just expected something higher.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone out of my way to see it over and over again like I do with some movies.
Yeah.
So that's why I say that. It's like I would want to watch it again, but not for a little while.
This is the only one that I'd rewatch.
Yeah.
Like it was like a fun movie. It wasn't just about the treasure hunt. The treasure hunt was cool, but just like outside, like the only thing I thought was bad was the plane effects and
everything else was on point.
It was super good. It had a lot of emotional value and just was like interesting and funny and exciting. So I'm here with an 8.2.
All right. Yeah.
So
there you go.
I thought you were gonna be the 8s for sure.
Yeah.
Like maybe a 9er.
Yeah.
But no.
No, maybe not. I mean, it has a lot of the great things that I love about movies. Yeah. So, yeah, but
I respect it.
I'm right
I was
up
surprised.
there.
I was just
I'm
surprised.
right up there. I mean, there was a couple of things that that were okay to me, but I liked how they tied the young Indy into the.
That was cool. That's it. It was really well rounded.
Yeah.
Like this could have been a
shout
standalone.
Out to River Phoenix who played young Indy.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Yep.
I think this could have been a good standalone. Like if this was the first, it could have been the first one.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Which would have been even better. Like it's like standalone wise is so well done. You really get all the characters, and it doesn't really have any callbacks to the originals, except there is one point that I noticed. What was it? When they're in the tomb in the library, like they go underground, and when he's like, there's a painting or something on the wall.
Yes.
And he goes, that's the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
And then she's like, are you sure? And he's like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the only callback, but it was sick. I was like, good callback.
It was great.
It was a great callback.
Yeah, because his you could tell his demeanor was like. Oh,
but you wouldn't catch it unless you saw the first one, right? But it was like it was an I want to say eloquent callback. It was really well done.
Yes, I loved it.
So anything else you want to say about it?
What'd you think of the whole when they got to where the Holy Grail was? What'd you think of that place?
The set design or like the
design? That was real. That was a real place.
I wondered.
Yeah.
Because they went to a bunch of real places. I think, let me see right here. I have it. Excuse me. They went to Spain, Italy, West Germany, Jordan, UK, and United States. I'm assuming that was in Jordan.
I think it was. The place they call Petra, I think is the name they use for it.
Okay.
Which means rock or the rock.
The rock.
Yeah. And it was, I guess it was like a like a tomb, in the open part at the front there is like the treasury of the tomb, I think, where they go into it. And it's like 150 feet tall. It's carved right into the rock.
It looked legit.
Really very cool.
Yeah, it looked legit.
Yeah. And the only way to get to it is through that cavern, which at points, I guess, is only like 12 feet wide. So it's very narrow. The half, they call it.
I don't think it was an actual half moon. I think that was like effects.
Yeah.
But that looked good too, though, to be fair.
Yeah. But it's actually carved out to get to it through that. And it's a neat place from what I could read from, about it. But it's in the back of I have a Bible that actually shows a lot of that stuff. And that happens to be in the back of it.
Why?
I think it's historical to some of the places that are described in certain scripture passages. And so it's like it shows that this is a real place. This wasn't just a story about a place. This was part of this is part of a story in scripture that shows it to be real. So
cool.
and there's quite a few that I have in the back. I have a whole section that's all
cool. I gotta check that out.
Archaeological. So, and it's it's like he says at the beginning. The archaeology is that's the key to archaeology is facts,
not truth.
Not truth.
If
you want truth, you go to class such and such.
Yeah, he threw shade at philosophy.
Yes. So and that's. I mean, if you think about it, it's true. It's the evidence that produces the facts. Like they're undeniable. This exists. So you have to know that this was. You have to at least acknowledge this was a real place. So it's kind of cool.
That is cool. I fuck with that.
But the work that must have went into that.
I don't even.
Incredible.
I know. That's why I think some of those places like that, being there is obviously, naturally just way more awing and interesting and creates like probably a really unique energy / vibe rather than seeing it in a picture. Because obviously you're like, oh, this is incredible. But like being there and seeing this, architecture and seeing like, I think like the pyramids, for instance, is like one of those things. Like you see a picture, you're like, oh, that's incredible. But like from everything that I've heard, just like people interviewing and people that have traveled there, they're like, it's fucking incredible.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of
and the magnitude of it.
Yeah, and just like what went into like making such a structure or whatever is like way more.
And the tools they used, to do it. Yeah. It's all hand stuff. It wasn't like machinery. It was all done by hand. Pretty crazy. Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, word, dude. Yeah. Are you good with this?
Oh yeah, it's a great, great movie. Great.
Definitely.
Really enjoyed it, and
definitely.
Again. Yeah, so that's always good.
Word. Yeah. All right, dude. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Really enjoy it. It's fun.
Yeah, fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Facts. Like archaeology. Facts.
Facts.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode. Appreciate y'all. I hope you enjoyed it. Ricky Brown hitting it with a 7.9.
Yes.
Your host hitting it with a 8.2. I want everybody to be on the lookout for the next Indiana Jones shit, because that's coming soon with Ricky Brown and John Smith, if I'm not mistaken. He's flying out here next week. We about to get after it and talk about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yes. Yep.
So, yeah, appreciate everybody. Hope your life is full of love and not lust, because we saw how that works out. It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It could kill you.
It could kill you. Your lust could kill you. It's facts. So, yeah, I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. I will catch you next episode. Deuces.